The River and the Mountain, a motivational tale. Chapter 1. The First Step. The morning sun rose gently over the valley, painting the sky with shades of gold and soft pink. The air was crisp, carrying with it the fragrance of damp earth and blooming jasmine. Somewhere in the distance, a river hummed its eternal song, flowing steadily towards a destination unseen. In a quiet village nestled between green hills and the silver river, there lived a young man named Ayan. He was known for his kind eyes, but his heart was heavy with doubts. The people around him seemed content with their simple lives, tending to farms, weaving cloth, trading in the marketplace, but Ayan often felt restless, as though his spirit longed for something beyond the horizon. One evening, as he sat by the riverside, watching the current move with purpose, an old traveler approached him. The man's beard was white as snow, his steps slow but steady, and his presence calm like the shade of a tree in summer. You sit here every day, young one, the traveler said softly. Why do you watch the river so closely? Ayan hesitated. Because it moves with such certainty. It never doubts where it is going. I wish I had that same confidence in my life. I feel lost, like a leaf blown by the wind. The old man smiled. The river looks certain because it surrenders to the path carved for it. Yet within its surrender is strength. It shapes valleys, nourishes fields, and reaches the mighty ocean. Perhaps what you seek is not to control the path, but to walk it with trust. These words lingered in Ayan's mind long after the traveler had gone. That night he lay awake under the stars, staring at the ceiling of his small room. He wondered, could life really be about surrender and trust? Or was there something more I must do? The next morning, Ayan rose earlier than usual. He packed a small satchel with bread, dates, and a flask of water. He told his mother he would be gone for some days, seeking answers to the questions that filled his heart. She looked at him with both pride and concern, placing her hand on his head. Remember, my son, she whispered, the world is wide, but the truest journeys happen within you. The next morning, Ayan rose earlier than usual. He packed a small satchel with bread, dates, and a flask of water. He told his mother he would be gone for some days, seeking answers to the questions that filled his heart. She looked at him with both pride and concern, placing her hand on his head. Remember, my son, she whispered, the world is wide, but the truest journeys happen within you. Be kind, be patient, and never let despair darken your heart. With those blessings, Ayan stepped onto the dirt road leading out of his village. With those blessings, Ayan stepped onto the dirt road leading out of his village. His journey had begun. The road wound between fields of wheat and mustard, swaying gently in the breeze. Birds sang above, and shepherds greeted him with curious glances. At first, Ayan felt a rush of excitement. Every step seemed to carry him closer to discovery. But by the third day, fatigue crept into his body. His sandals wore thin, his shoulders ached from carrying his satchel, and his heart grew impatient. He began to wonder if he had made a mistake leaving the comfort of home. That evening he came upon a wide meadow where an old shepherd tended his flock. The shepherd, seeing Ayan's weariness, offered him a place by the fire. They shared bread and milk, and in the quiet glow of the flames, Ayan spoke of his doubt. I left my home to find purpose, he confessed, but already I feel lost. I thought the path would be easier. The shepherd chuckled, his eyes twinkling. Young man, even sheep stumble before they learn where to step. Purpose is not found in ease, but in endurance. If the mountain were smooth, no one could climb it. These words soothed Ayan's heart like cool water on dry soil. He thanked the shepherd and rested beneath the open sky, where countless stars blinked above like lanterns of hope. The next morning he woke renewed. He realized that the road itself was part of the answer. Every struggle, every discomfort was shaping him. He was not meant to reach the ocean in a single stride, but to let each step strengthen his spirit. With this thought, Ayan pressed onward toward lands unknown. Weeks passed. Ayan crossed forests where sunlight filtered like gold through the leaves, and deserts where the horizon shimmered with mirages. He met many people along the way. A potter who taught him patience by shaping clay slowly with steady hands. A teacher who spoke of the value of questions, and a child who laughed freely, reminding him that joy was not found in possessions but in presence. Each encounter left him with a lesson, and though his body grew weary, his heart grew lighter. He began to see that the world was full of quiet teachers, and wisdom was hidden in ordinary moments. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with fire, Ayan climbed a hill that overlooked a vast plain. From there, he saw in the distance a great mountain, its peak lost in clouds. Something stirred within him, a pull, a calling, as though the mountain whispered his name. He knew then that his journey was far from over. The river had led him this far, but the mountain stood as his true test. And so, with renewed determination, Ayan set his eyes on the towering peak. He did not know how long it would take, or what hardships awaited, but he was ready to walk forward with trust, like the river that flowed, certain yet surrendered. The first step had been taken, and that was enough. Moral lessons from chapter 1. Number 1. Trust the path even when it feels uncertain. Repeat after me. Trust the path even when it feels uncertain. 2. Endurance builds strength. Purpose is revealed through patience. Repeat after me. Endurance builds strength. Purpose is revealed through patience. 3. Wisdom often comes from ordinary people and small moments. Repeat after me. 3. Wisdom often comes from ordinary people and small moments. 4. Every great journey begins with a single step. Try it. Every great journey begins with a single step. Don't be afraid of mistakes. It's okay, but keep trying. Chapter 2. The Road of Trials. The mountain loomed in the distance like a silent guardian, its summit hidden by clouds that shifted and swirled like secrets. For days, Ayan walked toward it, guided only by the pull he felt in his heart. The path was no longer easy meadows or wide roads. It narrowed into rocky stretches and uneven ground, testing his patience with every step. On the fifth day of this new journey, the sky darkened, thunder rumbled across the plains, and heavy rain poured down. Ayan searched desperately for shelter and found a hollow beneath a great boulder. He sat there shivering, his breath soaked, his flask nearly empty. Why did I leave home? He whispered bitterly. I could have been warm, safe, and surrounded by love. Instead, I chase a dream I do not fully understand. His voice was drowned by the storm, but within his heart, another voice stirred. The river never stops because of rain. The mountain does not fear the storm. Why should you? Those words, whether his own thoughts or a whisper of the unseen, gave him strength. He tightened his cloak around his shoulders and endured the long night. By dawn, the storm had passed, and the valley was fresh with glistening dew. As Ayan continued, he met a merchant on the road. The man's cart was heavy with goods, jars of honey, sacks of grain, and bright fabrics. But the wheel of the cart had broken, and the merchant sat helplessly on the roadside. Can you help me, traveler? The merchant asked. I have tried all morning, but I cannot lift the cart alone. Ayan was weary, but he remembered the shepherd's words. Purpose is found in endurance. He set down his satchel and pushed with all his strength until the cart stood upright once again. The merchant's eyes shone with gratitude. You have saved me much loss, he said, handing Ayan a small jar of honey. Take this as a gift. May sweetness follow you on your journey. Ayan smiled and accepted the gift. It was not the honey alone that warmed his heart, but the reminder that service to others was never wasted. Each act of kindness was like a seed planted in unseen soil. Days passed, and the terrain grew harsher. The air thinned, and the paths grew steep. Sometimes he stumbled, scraping his knees on jagged rock. Days passed, and the terrain grew harsher. The air thinned, and the path grew steep. Sometimes he stumbled, scraping his knees on jagged rocks, but he always rose again. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, he encountered a group of travelers resting around a campfire. They welcomed him, sharing their bread and dried food. Around the fire, stories flowed, tales of distant lands, of victories and defeats, of joy and sorrow. One traveler, a gray haired woman with eyes like polished stones, noticed Ayan's silence. You listen more than you speak, he said. Why is that? Ayan lowered his gaze. Because I do not yet know who I am. I have no story worth telling. The woman chuckled softly. Every soul carries a story. Some are written in victories, others in struggles. Do not be ashamed of your silence. It is the soil where your story will grow. That night, Ayan lay awake under the stars, her words echoing in his heart. Even silence has meaning. Even uncertainty has value. As he ascended further, hunger gnawed at him. His bread had run out, and only a little honey remained. His body weakened, and his steps slowed. At last, exhausted, he sank beside a stream that trickled from the mountain's side. He dipped his hands into the cold water and drank deeply. As he did, he noticed a small flower blooming beside the stream, fragile yet radiant, its petals trembling in the mountain wind. How do you survive here, little one? Ayan whispered. The soil is thin, the winds are harsh, and yet you bloom. The flower gave no answer, but its existence was answer enough. Life, even in hardship, could find beauty. Strength was not the absence of struggle, but the will to grow in spite of it. Ayan rose again, his heart steadied by this silent lesson. One afternoon, he reached a narrow ledge. On the other side of the ravine, the path continued upward, but between him and safety was a broken bridge, its wooden planks missing, its ropes frayed. Fear clutched his chest. One wrong step, and he would fall into the depth below. He stood frozen, his mind filled with doubt. Then he remembered the river. It did not pause before rocks, it flowed over them. The mountain did not bow before storms, it stood tall, and he too must move forward. With trembling hands, he grasped the rope and stepped onto the first plank. His heart pounded, sweat gathered on his brow, but slowly, steadily he crossed. When at last his feet touched solid ground, relief washed over him like rain. Ayan fell to his knees and whispered, Thank you, O sustainer of hearts. Without trust, I would not have crossed. By the time the sun set, he had reached a plateau. From there he saw the village below, small and distant, and the peak above, still hidden in mist. For the first time he realized how far he had come, not only in distance but in spirit. His body was weary, but his soul felt lighter. He had endured storms, served others, learned patience, and faced his fears. As night fell, he wrapped himself in his cloak, looking toward the unseen summit. He no longer feared the path ahead. He knew now that every step, no matter how painful, was shaping him into someone stronger, wiser, and more grateful. And with that quiet certainty, Ayan closed his eyes and rested, cradled by the mountain's silence. Moral lessons from chapter 2. 1. Storms test us, but they also cleanse and renew us. 2. Helping others brings unexpected sweetness into life. 3. Silence is not emptiness, it is the soil where stories grow. 4. Even fragile life can bloom in hardship. 5. Fear is crossed only through trust and steady steps. Chapter 3. The Mirror of the Heart. The morning air on the plateau was thin and sharp, carrying with it a silence that seemed to sink into Ayan's bones. He rose slowly, stretching his weary limbs, and gazed upward. The peak still vanished into clouds, its majesty hidden. Yet something inside him whispered that the summit was not only a place of stone and snow, but also a place within. Yet something inside him whispered that the summit was not only a place of stone and snow, but also a place within. He walked onward, his sandals worn thin, his satchel almost empty. Every step grew heavier, but he reminded himself of the lessons he had gathered along the way. The patience of the potter, the joy of the child, the strength of the flower, the courage at the broken bridge. Each memory was like a lantern, lighting his path in the shadows of fate. By midday, he reached a cave carved into the mountainside. Its entrance was wide, but the inside was dark. Needing shelter from the cool winds, he entered cautiously. The air smelled of damp stone and earth. He sat down, leaning against the wall, ready to rest. But as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he noticed something strange. In the far corner, water dripped steadily into a shallow pool. The surface of the pool reflected dim light from the entrance, and as Ayan leaned closer, he saw his own face staring back at him. At first, it was just a reflection, but then, to his astonishment, the image began to move on its own. His reflection spoke with his own voice, but the tone was harsh, filled with scorn. Why do you climb? The reflection is sneered. You are weak, unworthy, and foolish. Your village needed you and you abandoned them. You think the mountain will give you answers? You will find nothing but failure. Ayan's heart pounded. He clenched his fists. No, I left to find purpose, to discover who I am. The reflection laughed cruelly. Purpose? You are running from yourself. You seek greatness, but you are nothing more than a lost boy chasing shadows. Turn back before you waste what little strength you have. Ayan closed his eyes. Fear and doubt swirled within him, threatening to break his resolve. But then he remembered the shepherd's words. If the mountain were smooth, no one could climb it. The reflection laughed cruelly. Purpose, you are running from yourself. You seek greatness, but you are nothing more than a lost boy chasing shadows. Turn back before you waste what little strength you have. Ayan closed his eyes. Fear and doubt swirled within him, threatening to break his resolve. But then he remembered the shepherd's words. If the mountain were smooth, no one could climb it. He opened his eyes and whispered, You are not my enemy, you are my fear, and I will not bow to fear. Slowly the reflection faded, and the pool grew calm once more. Ayan knelt beside it, tears slipping down his cheeks. For the first time he understood that the hardest battles were not against storms or stones, but against the voices within his own heart. When he stepped out of the cave, the sky was clear. The mountain air, though cold, felt purer, as if he had shed a heavy burden. His steps were lighter now, his heart steadier. He continued upward, and as the days passed, the mountain revealed new trials. The path grew steeper, forcing him to crawl on hands and knees. At times, snow began to fall, covering the stones and chilling his bones. Yet every hardship reminded him of the river, always flowing, always moving forward. One evening, as he climbed a narrow ridge, he heard a cry. Looking down, he saw a traveler clinging to a ledge below, his foot caught between rocks. Without hesitation, Ayan lowered himself carefully, extending his hand. Take hold, he called. The man, trembling with exhaustion, clasped his hand, and with great effort, Ayan pulled him to safety. The traveler collapsed, gasping for breath. You saved me. I thought I would surely perish. Ayan gave him the last of his bread and water. We climbed together, he said simply. The traveler's eyes filled with tears. Why would you share what little you have? Ayan smiled faintly. Because kindness is lighter than burden. If I carry it, I grow stronger. They rested together that night, and though Ayan had given away the last of his food, he felt no hunger. The act of service had nourished him in ways bread could not. The next day, the traveler thanked him and chose to return down the mountain. Ayan, however, continued his ascent. He knew now that his journey was not only about reaching the summit, but about shaping his soul with every choice. As he walked, he reflected on what the mirror in the cave had shown him. He realized that fear would always be present, whispering doubts, but courage was not the absence of fear. It was the decision to move forward despite it. By the time the sun dipped behind the peaks, painting the sky with strokes of crimson and violet, Ayan reached another plateau. This one was bare, save for a single withered tree standing alone in the wind. He touched its rough bark and whispered, "You stand even when all else has fallen. May I stand like you?" The tree did not answer, but its presence was reminder enough. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet endurance. Ayan built a small fire, wrapped himself in his cloak, and gazed at the stars. For the first time in weeks, he felt a calm deeper than sleep. His heart was no longer restless. It was anchored by lessons carved into his very being. He closed his eyes and dreamed not of fear, but of light. Moral lessons from Chapter 3. 1. The greatest battles are within, the voice of fear and doubt. 2. Courage is not the absence of fear, but persistence despite it. 3. Helping others, even when empty handed, fills the soul with unseen strength. 4. Endurance, like a withered tree that still stands, is a form of quiet victory. Chapter 4. The Weight of Humility. The morning came with a sharp wind that howled across the plateau. Ayan stirred from his sleep, his cloak heavy with frost. His body shivered, but his spirit burned with determination. The peak, still hidden in its crown of clouds, beckoned him silently. He tightened his satchel, now nearly empty, and began his climb once more. The path narrowed into steep ridges where loose stones crumbled under his feet. Each step demanded focus, and each breath grew thinner as the air became scarce. Hours passed before he reached a slope where the snow lay deep, swallowing his legs to the knees. He stumbled, gasping, his muscles aching. The mountain seemed merciless now, stripping him of his strength. Why must it be so hard? He whispered bitterly. Why does every step feel like a punishment? But as he paused, bent over his trembling knees, a memory surfaced, the river flowing through obstacles, the flower blooming in harsh winds, the reflection that tested his courage. Each trial had been a teacher. Perhaps this too was a lesson. He sank to his knees in the snow and whispered a prayer. O giver of strength, make me small enough to learn, humble enough to endure, and strong enough to continue. Not long after, he saw smoke curling faintly in the distance. Following it, he discovered a small stone hut built into the mountain sky. Outside, an elderly woman was gathering wood, her back bent but her movements steady. Seeing Ayan's exhaustion, she beckoned him inside. The hut was warm, with a small fire crackling in the hearth. She served him a bowl of broth made from herbs and roots. "You climbed the mountain," she said, her voice calm like flowing water. "You dare to. Why do you?" Ayan sipped the broth, feeling its warmth spread through his body. "I seek purpose," he answered softly. "I wish to reach the summit and find what waits for me there." The woman studied him with eyes deep as the earth. "And if nothing waits for you, will the summit still have meaning?" Ayan was silent. He had not thought of that. She smiled faintly. "The mountain does not owe us answers. It strips away pride, fear, and weakness until only truth remains. The summit is not a gift, it is a mirror. You will find not what the mountain holds, but what you have carried within." Her words pierced his heart like an arrow of wisdom. He realized then that his climb was not about conquering the mountain, but about discovering the strength of humility within himself. He bowed his head. "Thank you, Mother of Wisdom. Your fire has warmed more than my body." She placed a wrinkled hand upon his shoulder. "Go with patience, child. The mountain accepts only those who walk with humility." Refreshed, Ayan continued upward. The terrain grew crueler still. Jagged cliffs rose before him, and icy winds bit at his skin. At times he slipped, bruising his hands and knees. At times he screamed in frustration, his voice carried away by the wind. But then he would stop, close his eyes, and breathe. He remembered the woman's words. The summit is a mirror. Each struggle reflected his weakness, but also his growing strength. Each fall reminded him of the value of rising. Slowly, painfully, he climbed. One day, as the sun dipped low, Ayan reached a narrow ridge where a group of climbers were struggling. Their packs were heavy with supplies, and their faces twisted with pride as they tried to outpace one another. "Move aside!" one of them barked at Ayan. "We climb faster. Do not delay us." Ayan stepped aside, watching as they hurried forward with arrogance. But not long after, one of them slipped on the icy stones. His pack dragged him down, and he dangled over the edge, screaming for help. The others argued, each unwilling to risk themselves. Ayan, without hesitation, rushed forward. He dropped his satchel and crawled to the edge, gripping the man's hand. With all his strength, he pulled until at last the climber was safe on solid ground. The man panted, his pride shattered. "Why? Why would you help me when I mocked you?" Ayan smiled weakly because the mountain teaches humility. If we forget it, we fall. The group, ashamed, bowed their heads. They lightened their packs, leaving behind unnecessary weight, and moved on quietly. Ayan picked up his satchel and continued alone, but in his heart he carried a deeper understanding. Pride is heavier than a stone, and humility is lighter than wings. As night fell, Ayan built a small fire beneath an overhanging rock. He wrapped himself tightly and gazed up at the stars. His body was battered, his lips cracked from the cold, yet his soul was calmer than ever. He whispered to himself, "The summit is not the reward. The climb itself is shaping me. If I reach the peak, it will not be victory over the mountain. It will be victory over myself." The wind howled around him, but inside there was peace, and so he drifted into sleep, his heart steady, his spirit humble. Moral lessons from chapter 4. 1. Hardship teaches humility more than success ever can. 2. True wisdom often comes from simple, quiet voices. 3. The mountain life owes us nothing. It only reflects what we carry inside. 4. Pride is heavier than any burden, but humility makes the climb lighter. 5. The summit is not the prize. The journey itself transforms us. Chapter 5. The Night of Temptation. The days that followed were harsher than any Ayan had yet endured. The air thinned until each breath burned in his chest. Snow and ice covered the trail, and sharp winds clawed at his skin. His satchel, already light, now carried almost nothing, only the jar of honey from the merchant, the last trace of sweetness left from the valley below. Hunger gnawed at him like a wolf. His lips cracked, his hands trembled, and his steps grew unsteady. Each morning he rose with determination, but by noon doubt crept into his heart like a shadow. One evening, as he dragged his weary body across a ridge, he stumbled and fell to his knees, his vision blurred. He wanted to rise, but his strength betrayed him. "I cannot go on," he whispered. "The mountain is too great. I am too small." As he lay there, he thought of his village, of his mother's kind eyes, of the warmth of home, of the comfort of bread and safety. A powerful temptation rose within him. Turn back, return to the valley. You have climbed far enough. No one will blame you. The thought was like a sweet voice in his ears, offering escape from pain. His heart ached with longing. For a moment he nearly believed it. But then, through the howling wind, another memory stirred, the old traveler by the river, saying, "The river shapes valleys because it never stops flowing." Perhaps what you seek is not to control the path, but to walk it with trust. Ayan's eyes filled with tears. He realized the temptation was not kindness but deception. It offered ease, but at the price of purpose. To surrender now would be to abandon not only the mountain, but himself. With trembling hands, he opened the small jar of honey. He dipped his finger and tasted its sweetness. The flavor brought back the face of the merchant, the shepherd, the child, the potter, every soul who had left a lesson in his heart. "No," Ayan whispered fiercely, "I will not turn back. I will walk, even if I crawl. I will climb, even if I bleed." He rose slowly, painfully, and continued into the night. As darkness deepened, the wind grew colder, carrying with it a chorus of eerie sounds. Ayan searched for shelter, but found only a shallow hollow in the rocks. He huddled there, his cloak wrapped tightly, the jar of honey tucked close to his chest. That night, hunger twisted into visions. In his half dreams, he saw feasts laid before him, platters of bread, fruits, steaming bowls of rice. He reached for them, only for the images to discover into snow and frost. That night, hunger twisted into visions. In his half dreams, he saw feasts laid before him, platters of bread, fruit, steaming bowls of rice. He reached for them, only for the images to dissolve into snow and frost. In another vision, he saw himself standing proudly in his village, telling tales of how he had conquered the mountain. People cheered, showering him with praise. His heart swelled until he remembered the wise woman's words. The summit is not a gift, but a mirror. The dream shattered. He awoke with a gasp, realizing the mountain was stripping him even of vanity. It was teaching him that true strength was not for glory, but for growth. The next morning, weak but resolute, Ayan resumed his climb. His body felt like a shell, emptied of all comfort, but his heart burned with a strange clarity. He no longer dreamed of victory or recognition. He sought only truth. At midday, the path vanished beneath a wall of ice. Its surface glistened in the pale sun, steep and unforgiving. For a long moment Ayan despaired. His bare hands, raw and cracked, could not grip the icy wall. But then he noticed the grooves where water had once flowed and frozen again. They were faint, almost invisible, but they formed a narrow path upward. "This is the river's lesson," he murmured. "Even ice remembers the flow." With patience, he pressed his fingers into the grooves, inch by inch, clawing his way upward. His nails cracked, his skin bled, but he climbed steadily, remembering the river, the flower, the tree. Step by step, he rose higher. By the time he reached the top, the sun was sinking low, painting the sky with a crimson glow. Ian collapsed onto the snow, his chest heaving, his body trembling. And yet, as he looked upward, he saw the clouds around the summit thinning. For the first time, he glimpsed the faint outline of the peak, shining in the distance like a crown of silver. His eyes filled with tears. So close, so close. But his heart knew the hardest night was yet to come. That evening he built no fire. The wind was too fierce, and his strength too little. Instead, he lay beneath the stars, clutching his jar of honey and whispered prayers into the cold air. Test me, mountain, strip me, but do not break me. I will endure. The stars above flickered like candles, and though the night was bitter, a quiet warmth settled in his soul. Moral lessons from chapter 5. 1. Temptation often arrives disguised as comfort. It must be resisted to stay true to purpose. 2. Sweetness is not in escape, but in remembering those who gave us strength. 3. Dreams of glory are fragile. True endurance comes from humility. 4. Every obstacle, even ice, carries a hidden path. Patience reveals it. 5. The darkest night often comes just before the summit is revealed. Chapter 6. The Seeds of Change. The next morning dawned brighter than usual, as if the sky itself had painted a hopeful picture for Ian. He rose early, he stretched his arms, and inhaled the crisp air that carried with it the fragrance of blooming flowers. Each breath felt like a blessing, a reminder that life was more than survival. It was about growth. That day, Ayan decided to visit the farmlands on the outskirts of the village. The soil was rich and fertile, yet many fields remained barren, abandoned by farmers who had lost faith in the harvest after years of drought. He walked through the cracked earth, his feet crunching on the dry surface, and paused by a patch where an old scarecrow stood, leaning as if tired of its lonely watch. Ayan closed his eyes and imagined rows of green sprouting where dust now reigned. The vision stirred something inside him, a quiet conviction that change was possible. He remembered the river's lesson. Patience and persistence carved the path forward. Back in the village, he shared his thoughts with the elders. What if we plant again? What if we trust the soil and the sky one more time? The room fell silent. Some elders shook their heads. We have tried, said one, his voice weary. The rains do not favor us. The land has betrayed us. But Ayan's voice carried steady warmth. Perhaps it is not the land that betrayed us. Perhaps it is our hope that abandoned the land. If we nurture it with care, if we unite in faith, maybe the soil will remember how to bloom. His words did not ignite immediate enthusiasm, but a few younger villagers felt their hearts stir. Among them was Zara, a woman with callous hands and eyes that still held sparks of belief. She stepped forward. I will plant with you, Ayan. Even if the harvest is small, at least the earth will know we did not give up. One by one, others volunteered. By evening, a small group had gathered near the barren fields, holding seeds as though they were treasures. Their laughter and chatter mixed with the rustle of the breeze, bringing a sense of life back to the once forgotten land. Ayan knelt, placed the first seed into the soil, and whispered, "Grow, little one. Show us that hope is never wasted." The others followed, and soon the dry fields bore the silent promise of change. For days and nights they tended to the soil. They drew water from the river, carried it in jars, and poured it gently onto the earth. Their arms grew tired, but their spirits strengthened with every drop that touched the ground. Children joined in, turning the task into play, while elders watched with softened eyes. Weeks later, the miracle happened. Tiny green shoots broke through the soil, timid yet determined. The villagers gasped with joy, as though they had witnessed magic. But Aya knew it wasn't magic. It was patience, faith, and the courage to begin again. That night the village gathered under the starlit sky. The once skeptical elder spoke with tears in his eyes. Ayan, you have reminded us of something we had forgotten. When hearts unite in effort, even barren fields remember how to bloom. The seeds had grown not only into plants, but into renewed hope. The village had learned a timeless truth: despair is barren, but faith is fertile. Lessons of Chapter 6. When we unite hope with effort, what once seemed impossible can become reality. The soil of life blooms when watered with patience and faith. Chapter 7. The Storm Within. The joy of the sprouting fields filled the village with song and laughter. Children ran barefoot among the green shoots, and the elders began to hum old tunes they had long forgotten. Ian felt warmth in his heart as he watched the change unfold. Yet he also knew that growth was often tested, just as faith was tested by silence and waiting. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with strokes of orange and crimson, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind howled stronger than usual, rattling doors and shaking branches. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. The storms had not visited them in years, and now, when their crops had just begun to grow, the heavens seemed restless. That night, the storm struck with fury. Rain lashed the fields, wind tore through the village, and thunder growled like an angry beast. Ayan rushed outside with Sarah and others, trying to shield the tender plants with whatever they could find, cloths, branches, even their own bodies. But the storm was merciless. By morning, much of the field lay flattened, the fragile shoots broken and drowned in muddy pools. Silence hung over the village. The same people who had sung with joy now lowered their heads in despair. Some murmured that fate was cruel, that all their labor was wasted. The elder who had once found hope through Ion now muttered bitterly, "We should never have tried again. The land mocks us." Ion's heart ached, yet he stood firm. He looked at the ruined field, then at the weary faces of his people. His voice was quiet but steady. The storm has broken plants, but it has not broken the earth. The same people who had sung with joy now lowered their heads in despair. Some murmured that fate was cruel, that all their labor was wasted. The elder who had once found hope through Ion now muttered bitterly, "We should never have tried again. The land mocks us." Ion's heart ached, yet he stood firm. He looked at the ruined field, then at the weary faces of his people. His voice was quiet but steady. The storm has broken plants, but it has not broken the earth, and it has not broken us. What is lost today can return tomorrow if we have the courage to plant again. Zara placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "The storm tested us, Ion, but perhaps it also washed the soil clean. We should not see only the destruction, but also the renewal." Her words struck a chord. Slowly the villagers lifted their eyes. Some still hesitated, clinging to their grief, but others nodded. Hope flickered again, fragile yet alive, like the shoots that had once pierced the soil. In the days that followed, they replanted what they could. The work was harder this time because doubt whispered at every step. Yet Ayan reminded them, the river does not stop when it meets a rock. It flows around it, so must we. Weeks later, the fields sprouted once more. This time the plants grew stronger, as though the storm had prepared the soil for deeper roots. The villagers marveled at how resilient the green had become, and their hearts learned a lesson. Trials do not come to destroy, but to strengthen. That evening, as they gathered by the river, Ayan spoke softly. Storms are not punishments, they are teachers. They shake us, test us, and remind us that faith is not proved in calm, but in chaos. Let us not fear storms, for they are part of the journey. The people listened in silence, and for the first time the storm felt less like an enemy and more like an uninvited guest that had still left behind a gift. Lesson of Chapter 7. Hardships may break what is fragile, but they also prepare us for greater strength. True resilience is born not in calm skies, but in storms that test our faith. Chapter 8. The Weight of Silence. Though the fields now stood stronger, though green had begun to paint the barren land once more, Ayan carried a heaviness inside him. Outwardly he spoke words of encouragement and lifted the hearts of his people. But in the quiet of night, when the stars gazed down and the village slept, doubts crept into his mind. He sat by the river one evening, staring at the moon's reflection trembling on the ripples. The water whispered, as it always did, but this time its song stirred questions instead of comfort. Am I enough? He whispered to himself. What if the storms return, fiercer than before? What if I lead them into more pain? For the first time since his journey began, Ayan felt small, like a single leaf caught in the wind. His heart carried the weight of expectation. The villagers looked to him as a guide, as a light. But he was still human, still learning, still uncertain. He closed his eyes and remembered the mountain he had once seen on his journey, towering with calm strength. That mountain had not moved when winds roared or storms raged. It simply stood, grounded in its being. The thought lingered. Perhaps strength is not about never doubting, but about standing even when doubt weighs heavy. The next morning, Ayan walked through the village in silence. He noticed how children laughed as they played between the sprouting rows, how women carried water with songs on the lips, how men's hands tilled the soil with renewed purpose. They were beginning to live again, not merely survive. Zara approached him. sensing his goodness. You look troubled, she said gently. Ayan sighed. I fear failing them. They trust me too much. I am only a man. Zara smiled faintly. Ayan, you are not asked to be more than a man. You are asked only to be true to your faith, to your words, to your efforts. The rest belongs to the one who stands the rain and the storm. Do not carry the weight of the sky on your shoulders. Carry only your seed and plant it well. Her words lifted something heavy inside him. He realized that leadership was not about being flawless. It was about walking honestly, even with flaws. It was about walking honestly, even with flaws, and still choosing to move forward. That evening, he gathered the villagers once again. He did not speak with grand promises this time. Instead, his words were humble, steady, and sincere. I cannot protect you from storms. I cannot command the rains, but I can walk with you, step by step, planting when you plant, hoping when you hope. Together we are stronger than any storm. The villagers listened, and instead of disappointment, their faces softened with understanding. They did not need a perfect leader, they needed a companion who shared their journey. And in that moment, Ayan felt lighter. The silence inside him no longer carried fear but peace. For he had learned that true strength lies not in carrying every burden alone, but in sharing the weight with those who walk beside you. Lesson of Chapter 8. True leadership is not about being without doubt or weakness. It is about honesty, humility, and walking beside others with sincerity. His strength grows when burdens are shared. Chapter 9. The Winds of Renewal. The spring arrived slowly, brushing the valley with tender green and golden light. The fields, once barren and broken, now waved with healthy crops. The river sparkled more brightly than ever, as if rejoicing in the renewal of life. Birds returned, filling the air with song, and the villagers' laughter rang through the valley like bells of hope. Ayan walked among them, observing the changes. Children ran between the rows, their hands brushing the soft stalks of wheat. Women hummed songs as they carried water from the river, and men tilled the earth with steady rhythm. Even the elders, once skeptical, now offered guidance, smiling at the resilience of the land and its people. But Ayan's heart knew this joy was fragile. Life, like the mountain he had climbed, would always carry trials, and soon a new challenge arrived. A traveling merchant from a distant land, drawn to the valley by whispers of fertile soil and industrious people. The merchant, a tall man with robes of deep blue, spoke of lands beyond the mountains where crops failed and villages fell to drought. He had journeyed far, seeking those who could teach others the secrets of resilience. You have done what many deem impossible, he told Ayan. Your people have turned barren soil into abundance. Will you share your knowledge so that others may thrive as you have? Ayan considered the request carefully. He had learned that true strength is not hoarded but shared. The river does not guard its water, it flows freely, nourishing everything along its path. Yes, he said finally, but they must learn patience, humility, and endurance. There is no shortcut, no magic, only effort and faith will grow life. Only effort and faith will grow life. The merchant smiled, and together they planned to bring seeds and lessons to distant lands. Ayan realized that his journey, which had begun as a search for personal purpose, now extended far beyond himself. His steps had created ripples that could reach valleys he had never seen. Yet, amidst this joy, another storm approached, not of wind and rain, but of greed and envy. Travelers from neighboring villages arrived, drawn by the fertile fields. Some came seeking knowledge and shared effort, but others came with demands, hoping to take more than they gave. Ayan met them with patience. He guided the willing, teaching them the lessons of soil, water, and faith. For those who sought only gain, he set boundaries firmly but kindly. He remembered the lessons of the mountain. His strength is measured not by dominance, but by the courage to uphold truth with compassion. Through it all, the village grew stronger, not merely in crops, but in unity and spirit. People learned to share labor, knowledge, and kindness. The river of their efforts flowed outward, touching lands far beyond the valley. One quiet evening, Ayan stood on a hill overlooking the village. The wind was gentle, carrying scents of flowers and earth. He thought of the journey he had taken, from the restless boy by the river to the man who now guided many. He had faced storms, hunger, doubt, and fear, yet he had learned that the mountain within him had always been waiting for trust, patience, and perseverance. A lone star appeared in the sky, shimmering with quiet brilliance. Ayan whispered, "Thank you for the journey. May my steps, small as they are, leave paths for others to follow." And as he turned toward the village, he realized that the greatest mountains are not the ones made of stone, but the ones we climb within our hearts. Lesson of Chapter 9. 1. Knowledge and wisdom grow when shared freely, like water from a river. 2. True strength is compassion balanced with courage. 3. Prosperity is not only measured in crops or wealth, but in unity and the nurturing of others. 4. The journey of one can inspire many, rippling outward far beyond sight. Chapter 10. The Summit. The morning was still, almost sacred. Ayan stood at the edge of the final ridge, the last stretch of the mountain rising before him like a silent guardian. The clouds parted slightly, revealing the summit for the first time. Its peak glistened in the sun, crowned with snow that sparkled like countless diamonds. Every muscle in his body ached. His hands were raw, his legs heavy, and his heart had carried burdens too numerous to count. Yet, with each step forward, he felt lighter. Not because the mountain had become easier, but because he had grown stronger within. He paused, taking a deep breath. The wind whispered through the rocks, a soft, almost melodic sound, as if the mountain itself acknowledged his journey. Ayan closed his eyes and reflected on everything he had endured. The storm that tested his patience, the river that taught persistence, the mirror that revealed fear, the village that had blossomed under his care, and the countless moments when hope seemed lost. Every step has led me here, he whispered, not for the glory of the peak, but for the truth it has awakened within me. Step by step he climbed, the air thinned, making each breath a labor. Step by step he climbed, the air thinned, making each breath a labor. But each breath reminded him of life's fragility and strength. He stumbled, fell, and rose again. Sometimes he paused, letting the wind guide him, teaching him that surrender to nature's rhythm can be as powerful as resistance. At last, after hours that felt both endless and fleeting, Ayan reached the summit. He stood on the snowy crown, looking down at the valleys below. The village he had nurtured lay distant, yet vivid, a tapestry of life, green and growing, a testament to patience and perseverance. Beyond it stretched other lands, waiting to feel the ripples of hope he had sown. He knelt in the snow, letting the cold touch his hands, and closed his eyes. In the silence, he understood the mountain's final lesson. The summit is not about conquest, but reflection. It mirrors the heart, revealing what we carry within. Ayan realized then that he was no longer the boy who had left home in search of purpose. He was a man who had learned patience, humility, courage, and faith. Every storm, every act of kindness, every moment of doubt had shaped him. The mountain had not merely been a place to climb, it had been a mirror, a teacher, and a guide. He whispered a prayer of gratitude. Thank you for the trials, the lessons, and the strength I did not know I possessed. May I carry these truths into every valley, every field, and every heart I meet. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Ian felt a profound peace. He understood that life's peaks are not only literal summits, but moments when the spirit recognizes its own growth. Every act of courage, every seed planted, every fear faced, these are the true summits of the heart. The descent awaited, but Ayan no longer feared it. He knew that the climb had transformed him, and that same transformation would guide him down, helping others find their path along the way. From the summit, he gazed once more at the world spread below him. He could see the river winding through the valley, the village alive and vibrant, and distant lands stretching towards the horizon. Each place seemed to carry a whisper of possibility, a reminder that hope and effort ripple outward, touching lives far beyond our sight. Ayan rose, brushing the snow from his cloak. He took the first step down the mountain with calm resolve, carrying the summit not as a place of triumph, but as a state of being. Moral lessons from Chapter 10. The Summit. 1. The summit is not a place of victory over the world, but a mirror reflecting inner growth. 2. True strength comes from patience, humility, courage, and faith. 3. Life's trials are not obstacles to avoid, but teachers to embrace. 4. Acts of kindness, perseverance, and hope ripple far beyond our immediate sight. 5. Every step, whether forward or downward, carries the lesson of the journey within us.